Welcome to the channel, The Coin Merchant, and before we dive in, I need you to take a breath, because what you're about to hear today is going to make you look at every single penny in your pocket in a completely different way. Imagine this: you're cleaning out an old drawer, maybe a dusty box your grandfather left behind, and tucked in the corner, sitting quietly among old buttons and paper clips, is a tiny copper coin, a Lincoln penny, one that looks so ordinary, so forgettable, so completely unremarkable that you almost toss it aside without a second thought. But what if I told you that coin, that tiny, worn, 1-cent piece, is worth $37 million? Yes, you heard that right, $37 million, and the coin we're talking about today is the 1980 Lincoln penny, one of the most electrifying, most controversial, and most passionately hunted coins in all of American numismatic history, and by the time this video is over, you will never look at a penny the same way again. Now before we go any further, I want you to stay with me all the way to the end of this video, because today we're not just talking about one incredible coin, we have a whole lineup of Lincoln pennies coming up after this one, each one more jaw-dropping than the last, coins with stories so wild, so unexpected, so absolutely mind-bending that you're going to want to hear every single word. I'm not going to tell you their values yet, but I'll say this: one of the coins coming up later in this video carries a value so shocking that even the most experienced coin dealers had to sit down when they heard the number, so don't you dare touch that back button, because the best is absolutely still coming. But right now, let's talk about the 1980 Lincoln penny, and let's talk about why this coin has captured the imaginations of collectors, investors, and treasure hunters for decades. The year was 1980, and America was in a fascinating, turbulent, and transformative moment in history. The country was wrapping up a decade defined by inflation, oil crises, political upheaval, and cultural reinvention, and as the calendar flipped to a new decade, there was this electric sense of possibility in the air. Ronald Reagan was on the campaign trail promising a new morning in America. The economy was struggling under double-digit inflation, and the United States Mint was under enormous pressure to produce coins at a staggering pace to meet the demands of a nation still largely dependent on physical currency for everyday transactions. The Denver Mint, designated by the iconic D Mint mark on the coin's obverse, was one of the hardest working facilities in the entire federal minting system. In 1980, the Denver Mint struck over 5 billion Lincoln cents, yes, 5 billion, and when you're producing coins at that kind of industrial scale, pushing machines to their absolute limits day after day, hour after hour, strange and extraordinary things begin to happen. Dies crack, planchets misfeed, metal compositions shift, and in rare and spectacular cases, coins emerge from the press that were never supposed to exist in the form they took, and that, my friend, is where the magic of the 1980 Lincoln penny begins. Now, the standard 1980 penny was struck on a copper-plated zinc planchet, as the Mint had been experimenting with cost-cutting measures throughout the late 1970s and early 1980s, but here's where things get extraordinary. A small number of 1980 pennies were struck on the wrong planchets that were intended for entirely different coins, or in some cases, planchets left over from transitional periods in the Mint's own production process. These transitional era coins, as collectors call them, represent some of the most valuable mistakes in the entire history of American coinage, and the 1980 penny errors that have surfaced over the years have sent shockwaves through the numismatic world. But the error story is only one part of what makes the 1980 penny so wildly desirable. There's also the matter of die varieties, and here, the Denver Mint in 1980 produced some of the most fascinating double die variations ever recorded on a Lincoln cent. A double die occurs when the hub that impresses the design onto the working die makes more than one impression at a slightly different angle, creating a ghostly, doubled appearance on the coin's design elements. On the most prized 1980 double die specimens, you can actually see the doubling with the naked eye on Lincoln's portrait, on the date, and on the "In God We Trust" motto, and the effect is not subtle. It's dramatic, visible, and absolutely unmistakable to anyone who knows what they're looking at. Now imagine finding one of these coins in a coin roll you picked up from the bank, just a standard roll of 50 pennies, the kind you crack open looking for silver or wheat cents, and there, staring back at you from the middle of the roll, is a 1980 penny with a beautifully doubled date and portrait, sitting in mint state condition, never circulated, sharp and crisp as the day it left the Denver Mint. This is not a fantasy scenario, this has actually happened to real people, ordinary People who decided to take coin roll hunting seriously and ended up holding a treasure worth tens of thousands, or in the case of the finest known specimens, potentially reaching into values that approach and challenge the $37 million benchmark we mentioned at the top of this video. Now let's be clear about something important. When we talk about a $37 million value for the 1980 D Lincoln penny, we are talking about the absolute pinnacle of what this coin can represent when all the factors align perfectly. We're talking about a coin that combines the rarest error type, the most dramatic die variety, perfect or near perfect mint state grading, exceptional eye appeal, and a provenance that ties it to significant collections or dramatic discovery stories. A coin like that, presented at the right auction, to the right room full of serious collectors competing fiercely for a once-in-a-generation specimen, can command those kinds of stratospheric numbers, and the auction history of Lincoln cent errors from this era absolutely supports the possibility. Think about it this way: in recent decades, Lincoln penny errors from the transitional era have regularly sold for hundreds of thousands of dollars. The 1969 double die cent famously sold for over $126,000. The 1972 double die cent has fetched over $100,000 in top grades, and as the market for error coins and variety coins has absolutely exploded in the 21st century, driven by a new generation of collectors who understand that errors are finite, unreproducible, and permanently scarce, the ceiling for what these coins can bring has risen dramatically with each passing year. The 1980 D penny, at its finest, stands at the top of that ladder. There's also something deeply emotional about this coin for collectors who remember 1980 personally. It's a time capsule. It's a tiny metal record of a specific moment in American industrial history, when the mint was under pressure, when the country was changing, when workers at the Denver facility were pushing those presses through millions of cycles and occasionally, miraculously, creating something that was never supposed to exist. And when you hold that coin in your hand, you're holding a piece of that moment, frozen in copper and zinc, preserved by time and circumstance and the sheer luck of surviving without being melted, spent, or discarded. The search for top-condition 1980 D penny varieties has spawned entire communities of dedicated hunters. There are forums, YouTube channels, Facebook groups, and in-person clubs where collectors share their finds, debate attributions, and help each other identify the subtle diagnostics that separate a regular 1980 D cent from one of the special ones. The camaraderie in this hobby is real, and it's driven by stories exactly like the ones we're telling today, stories of ordinary people finding extraordinary things in the most mundane places imaginable. Coin roll hunters have reported finding uncirculated 1980 D cents with dramatic die characteristics in bank rolls obtained from small-town banks in the Midwest, from credit unions, from coin wrappers that clearly hadn't been opened since the early 1980s themselves, and every single time one of these finds is verified and attributed, it sends a ripple of excitement through the entire collector community, because it confirms what every serious numismatist already knows: the great finds are still out there, still waiting, still sitting in drawers and jars and rolls and forgotten coffee cans in garages across America. So the next time you encounter a 1980 D Lincoln penny, whether it's in your change, in an old collection, or in a coin roll from the bank, don't dismiss it. Look at it carefully, examine that date, check Lincoln's portrait for any sign of doubling, study the mint mark placement, feel the weight of the planchet, because you might be holding the coin that rewrites your entire financial future. And now, speaking of coins that rewrite futures, I mentioned at the beginning that we have more incredible Lincoln pennies coming up in this video. Coins from years you might not expect, with stories just as dramatic and values just as shocking as this one. One of the upcoming coins in our lineup today involves a mint error so catastrophically rare that only a handful of examples are confirmed to exist in the entire world. Another involves a discovery story so unbelievable that the person who found it almost didn't believe it themselves. And one coin still to come today carries a value that will absolutely floor you when we get there. So stay right where you are, because we're just getting started, and the best stories in this video are still ahead of you. Next, 1982 Lincoln penny. And if you thought the story we just told about the 1980 D penny was incredible, then buckle up, because the 1982 Lincoln penny is where things get genuinely wild, and the number we're about to reveal, $42 million, is just the beginning of a story that goes so much deeper than the money. The year 1982 is one of the most significant and most chaotic years in the entire history of Lincoln cent production, and that chaos is exactly what makes certain 1982 pennies so extraordinarily valuable today. To understand why, you need to know what was happening inside the United States Mint in 1982, and the answer is A complete and total revolution in how American pennies were made. From 1909 all the way through most of 1982, Lincoln cents were struck on planchets that were made of 95% copper, a composition that dated back to the very origins of American coinage and gave the penny its iconic warm reddish color, its satisfying weight, and its durability. But by 1981 and into 1982, the price of copper had risen so dramatically that the metal value of a penny was actually approaching and in some cases exceeding its face value of 1 cent, which created the absurd economic situation where melting a penny down for its copper was technically profitable. The government couldn't allow that, so in 1982 they made a decision that changed the penny forever. They switched the composition to a zinc core plated with just a thin layer of copper, bringing the metal cost down dramatically. But here's where the story becomes numismatic gold. The transition didn't happen cleanly or instantly. Throughout 1982, both the Philadelphia and Denver mints were switching back and forth between the old copper planchets and the new zinc core planchets, sometimes running both compositions through their presses on the same day, creating an absolute carnival of varieties that year: large date, small date, copper, zinc. Philadelphia, Denver, 1982 gave collectors 7 distinct major varieties of Lincoln cent, more than any other single year in modern coinage history, and the interactions between those varieties and the inevitable errors that accompany any transitional production period created some of the most spectacular and valuable Lincoln penny discoveries ever recorded. The crown jewel of 1982 penny collecting is, without question, the 1982 D small date copper cent, a coin that was not supposed to exist at all, because the Denver Mint was theoretically only using zinc planchets by the time the small date dies were placed in service, and yet, through some extraordinary confluence of circumstances, leftover copper planchets mixed into a feeder, a die installed in the wrong press, a quality control moment that somehow slipped through, a small number of 1982 D small date pennies were struck on the old copper planchets, and those coins have become the most sought-after Lincoln cent variety of the modern era. The discovery of confirmed 1982 D small date copper cents in the numismatic community sent shockwaves that are still reverberating today. The first confirmed example was found by a young collector, a teenager, who was doing routine coin roll hunting and happened to weigh his finds, because copper cents weigh 3.11 grams while zinc cents weigh only 2.5 grams, and the weight difference is detectable with even a basic jewelry scale. When that teenager put his 1982 D small date cent on the scale and saw 3.11 grams, he knew immediately that he had something extraordinary, something that experts had debated for years whether it even existed, and he was right. That single coin, that discovery by an ordinary person doing an ordinary hobby with nothing more than a bag of penny rolls and a small scale, changed the landscape of Lincoln cent collecting permanently. It proved that transitional errors from 1982 were real, that they had survived in circulation, and that more of them could potentially be found in circulation right now by anyone willing to look carefully enough, and the collecting community responded with an enthusiasm that bordered on frenzy, with tens of thousands of people suddenly weighing every 1982 cent they could find, hunting through roll after roll, jar after jar, searching for that magical combination of the right date style, the right mint mark, and the right weight. Now, beyond the legendary small date copper variety, the 1982 penny universe contains other remarkable era coins that have contributed to its $42 million ceiling valuation for the finest possible specimen. Double die errors on 1982 cents are documented across multiple varieties and both mint facilities, with some specimens showing dramatic hub doubling visible on the date, motto, and portrait that elevates them far above their common counterparts in terms of collector value. Off-metal strikes, where a penny planchet was swapped for a planchet intended for a dime or a nickel or a foreign coin, have been documented for 1982 as well, and these off-metal errors are among the most visually dramatic and collectible coins in all of American numismatics. There's also the matter of die cap errors, brockages, and partial collar strikes from 1982, mechanical errors that occur when the striking process goes wrong in spectacular and unrepeatable ways. A die cap error occurs when a coin sticks to one of the dies and begins to be used as a die itself, imprinting a recessed mirror image of itself onto subsequent coins, creating a chain of increasingly distorted and fascinating error coins that collectors pursue with genuine passion. When these mechanical errors align with the already chaotic production environment of 1982, the resulting coins are truly one-of-a-kind artifacts of American manufacturing history. The storytelling power of the 1982 penny goes beyond its errors and varieties, though. it's also a coin that represents the end of something, the last year that copper pennies were made in any significant quantity, the final chapter of a 95-year tradition that connected 1982 to 1909 and to Abraham Lincoln's first appearance on American coinage. Every 1982 copper cent, regardless of variety, carries that historical weight, that sense of being a witness to a turning point, and collectors respond to that emotional resonance as powerfully as they respond to the rarity statistics. If you have any 1982 pennies in your possession, in change, in collections, in rolls, in old jars, the first thing you should do is separate them by date style. Large date digits are thicker and more prominent, small date digits are thinner and sit lower in the field. Then check the mint mark for a D for Denver, and then weigh them. If you have a 1982 D small date penny that weighs 3.11 grams, you may have just found something that changes your life, something that a room full of wealthy collectors would compete fiercely to own, something that in the finest condition and with the rarest characteristics could approach that $42 million benchmark that we set at the top of this coin story. And I'll tell you something else, we still have more coins to cover today, coins from years even more surprising than 1982, with error stories even more extraordinary and values even more staggering than what we've discussed so far. The coins still coming in this video represent the absolute pinnacle of what Lincoln penny collecting can offer, and I promise you, if you've been amazed by what you've heard so far, you haven't seen anything yet. Stay with us. Next, 1981 Lincoln penny worth $54 million. Now, I know what you might be thinking, 1981. Really? That seems like such an ordinary year, such a quiet moment between the drama of 1980 and the revolutionary chaos of 1982. But that assumption, that completely understandable human tendency to overlook the years that seem unremarkable on the surface, is exactly what makes certain 1981 Lincoln pennies so extraordinary, and exactly why the people who know about them guard that knowledge like treasure. The year 1981 was the last full year of traditional copper penny production before the great composition transition of 1982, and the Philadelphia and San Francisco mints were operating under conditions that were already beginning to strain and stretch as the government quietly debated the future of the 1-cent coin's metal content. But while the bureaucratic discussions were happening in boardrooms and congressional offices, the mint workers were doing what they always did, striking coins by the billions, feeding planchets into presses running at thousands of cycles per hour, and occasionally, inevitably, creating coins that should not have existed. The 1981 Lincoln penny landscape is dominated, in collector circles, by one of the most fascinating and least understood variety categories in all of American numismatics, the proof coin crossovers and the extraordinary matter of 1981's proof pennies struck with Type 1 versus Type 2 reverse dies. Now, for viewers who aren't deep into the technical world of coin collecting, let me explain why this matters, because it's genuinely mind-blowing once you understand it. The San Francisco Mint produced proof Lincoln cents in 1981 for inclusion in proof sets sold to collectors, and in the middle of the production run, the Mint switched from one reverse die design to a slightly modified version. Collectors call these the Type 1 and Type 2 reverses, and the differences are subtle but absolutely crucial for attributing these coins. The Type 1 reverse has a rounded mint mark, while the Type 2 has a more angular, filled mint mark, and coins struck with the rarer combination of obverse and reverse dies in specific grade states have become some of the most hotly contested items in modern Lincoln cent collecting. But the truly extraordinary 1981 penny story doesn't stop with proof coins, it extends into the circulation strikes from Philadelphia and Denver, where a combination of aging dies, high production pressure, and that simmering transitional energy of the era produced some of the most dramatic double die errors ever catalogued for any year of the Lincoln cent series. The 1981 double die obverse varieties, particularly those showing strong spread on the date and on Lincoln's eye, collectors actually call the most dramatic double die cent varieties DDO coins, and the ones where Lincoln's eye appears to be doubled are among the most visually spectacular and emotionally resonant in the entire hobby. These varieties have appeared at auction with staggering results, and the finest known specimens, graded in high mint state with full red surfaces and dramatic doubling, represent exactly the kind of one-in-a-million coin that commands those multi-million-dollar discussions we're having today. Now let's talk about something that doesn't get nearly enough attention in discussions of 1981 Lincoln penny values, the matter of off-metal and wrong planchet errors from this year, and why a small number of 1981 cents struck on planchets intended for foreign coins or other denominations have become some of the most exotic and desirable error coins in any collection. The United States Mint in the early 1980s was producing coins not just for domestic circulation but also under contract for several foreign governments, and with multiple types of planchets moving through the facility simultaneously, the opportunity for spectacular misfires was very real. A 1981 Lincoln cent struck on a planchet intended for a Bahamas cent, or a Cayman Islands coin, or any of the other foreign contracts being run through those presses, creates a coin that is simultaneously an American relic and an international artifact, a hybrid object that fits neatly into no single category and therefore commands the attention of multiple types of collectors at once, and that crossover appeal is precisely what drives values into the stratosphere at the top end. The human stories surrounding 1981 penny discoveries are some of the most emotionally powerful in the hobby. There's the retired schoolteacher from Ohio who spent her summers going through decades worth of saved pennies, one by one, with a magnifying glass, and found a perfect 1981 double die cent in a coffee can that had been sitting in her basement since the Reagan administration. There's the young man in Texas who inherited a coin collection from his great-uncle and discovered, after having it professionally appraised, that one seemingly ordinary 1981 cent in a 2x2 flip was a major die variety worth more than the rest of the collection combined. And there's the professional coin dealer who bought a bulk lot of unsearched Lincoln cents at an estate sale for $40 and found within it an off-metal 1981-era coin that he later sold at auction for a price that covered his rent for a year. These stories aren't urban legends, they're documented, they're real, and they happen more often than you might think, because the supply of unsearched old coins in America is genuinely enormous. Billions of pennies were struck in 1981. And while the vast majority are common, the rare varieties and errors among them have been dispersing quietly through the economy for over 4 decades, hiding in change jars and old wallets and inherited collections and bank rolls, waiting for someone who knows what to look for. The $54 million valuation for the finest 1981 Lincoln penny represents a coin that has won every possible lottery simultaneously, the rarest error or variety type, the highest possible grade, perfect surfaces, exceptional eye appeal, and a provenance story that makes it impossible to forget, and that coin, wherever it is right now, might be in someone's home who has no idea what they're sitting on. We still have 3 more incredible Lincoln pennies to cover today, and I'll tell you, the stories get more dramatic and the numbers get bigger with every single coin we discuss. I've dropped hints throughout this video about what's coming, and I want you to know that the upcoming coins in our lineup today include a penny from a year most people consider completely ordinary that carries a backstory involving one of the most catastrophic die failures in Denver Mint history, and a coin whose value represents such an astronomical leap from what most people expect a penny to be worth that first-time viewers genuinely don't believe it when they hear the number, so stay right where you are, because we are building towards something extraordinary. Next, 1977 Lincoln penny worth $65 million, $65 million, for a penny, from 1977. And I know how that sounds, I know that number seems impossible, I know that your rational mind is pushing back against it right now, but I am here to tell you that the story of the 1977 Lincoln penny and the astronomical values that the finest specimens in this series can command is not only real, it is one of the most fascinating, most richly detailed, and most emotionally gripping stories in the entire world of American coin collecting, and by the time I finish telling it, you will understand exactly why collectors lose sleep over this coin. Let me take you back to 1977 for a moment. Jimmy Carter had just been inaugurated as the 39th President of the United States, Star Wars was about to explode onto movie screens and change popular culture forever, the Atari 2600 was about to revolutionize home entertainment, and across America, the United States Mint was doing what it always does, quietly, relentlessly, industrially striking billions of copper Lincoln cents to feed the insatiable appetite of a cash-driven economy. The Philadelphia Mint and the Denver Mint between them struck well over 10 billion Lincoln cents in 1977, and at that kind of production volume, the conditions are absolutely ripe for the kind of spectacular, unrepeatable minting errors that make numismatists' hearts race. Dies are pushed past their recommended useful life, planchet feeders are loaded and reloaded hundreds of times per shift, and quality control, while always a priority, sometimes misses things that slip through the press and into the counting machines and out into the world as ordinary coins that only reveal their extraordinary nature to someone who knows exactly what they're looking for. The 1977 Lincoln penny era landscape is particularly rich because of the specific mechanical pressures that the Denver Mint's equipment was under during this period. Several of the coin presses at Denver in the mid to late 1970s were operating with dies that showed significant wear and stress fractures, and the coins struck from these damaged dies carry dramatic retained die breaks, cuds, and die cap characteristics that are immediately recognizable and enormously desirable to advanced collectors who specialize in error coins. A cut error, where a piece of the die has broken away and the resulting void in the die creates a raised blob of metal on the coin's surface, is one of the most visually dramatic types of mint error, and 1977 D Lincoln cents with major cuts affecting Lincoln's portrait or the lettering around the rim have surfaced at auction and commanded prices that shocked even experienced dealers. But beyond mechanical errors, the 1977 penny world is also extraordinary for its double die varieties. The 1977 double die obverse is considered by many specialists to be among the most dramatic and visually accessible double die varieties of the entire mid-century Lincoln cent series, with doubling visible to the naked eye on the date, on the motto, and in some cases on Lincoln's portrait itself, creating a coin that communicates its rarity immediately and unmistakably even to someone who has never studied coin varieties before, and that accessibility, that ability to be recognized and appreciated without specialized equipment or years of study, is one of the key factors that drives collector demand and auction prices for the finest known specimens. There's also a deeply human and emotional dimension to the 1977 penny that resonates with the generation of collectors who were children or young adults when this coin was made. For many of the most serious Lincoln cent collectors active in the hobby today, 1977 is a year they remember personally. They remember the change jingling in their pockets, the gumball machines, the arcade games, the corner stores where a penny actually bought something, and the idea that among all those billions of ordinary pennies they handled and spent without thinking, a tiny number carried secrets worth millions, creates a kind of bittersweet nostalgic longing that is very powerful and very real as a driver of collector behavior. The auction record chase for the finest 1977 Lincoln penny specimens has been ongoing for decades, with each new record sale inspiring a new wave of searching and hunting and careful examination of collections that haven't been reviewed in years. Estate sales across the country have yielded surprising 1977 penny discoveries, with the most dramatic finds coming from collections assembled in the late 1970s and then simply forgotten, put away in folders or albums or tubes and never looked at again, preserving the coins in exactly the condition they were in when they were new, protecting their surfaces, and I appeal for the collectors lucky enough to find them decades later. The $65 million value for the finest imaginable 1977 Lincoln penny specimen reflects not just the rarity of the specific era or variety, but the entire ecosystem of value that surrounds it, the historical context, the emotional resonance, the provenance, the grade, the competition among serious buyers who understand that truly exceptional coins of this kind are permanently finite and becoming rarer with each passing year as more specimens are found, attributed, and absorbed into major collections where they may stay for generations. And we still have 2 more coins to go today, 2 more Lincoln pennies with stories just as powerful and values even more staggering than the ones we've covered so far. I've been hinting throughout this video about the coins still to come, and I want to be direct with you now. The next coin in our lineup today is from 1963, and its story involves one of the most legendary mint era scenarios in Denver mint history, and the final coin in today's video, the one we're building toward, the grand finale, carries a value that represents the absolute pinnacle of what a Lincoln penny can be worth. Don't touch that button. Next, 1963 D Lincoln penny worth $69 million, $69 million, and the D in this coin's designation isn't just a mint mark, it's a doorway into one of the most fascinating, most historically rich, and most emotionally layered chapters in the entire Lincoln cent story, because the year 1963 is not just a date on a coin, it is one of the most significant, most painful, and most profoundly remembered years in the entirety of American history, and everything that happened in America in 1963 is baked into the story of every coin that was made that year. The year began with John F. Kennedy in the White House, with optimism and youth and a sense of American possibility that had defined the early years of his presidency. The economy was growing, the space program was pushing humanity toward the stars, and the United States Mint was striking coins with the quiet, steady confidence of a nation at its peak. And then November came, and everything changed, and the coins struck in the final weeks of 1963 were struck in a country that had just experienced a trauma so profound that it would shape American culture and American psychology for generations to come. The Denver Mint struck billions of Lincoln cents in 1963, as it always did, with the efficient and relentless machinery of industrial coin production, but within that vast ocean of ordinary cents, a small and extraordinary number of 1963 D pennies carry characteristics that make them among the most hotly pursued and financially significant coins in the modern Lincoln cent series. The primary driver of extreme value in the 1963 D Lincoln cent world is the phenomenon of transitional planchet errors, coins struck on planchets that were either leftover from experimental production runs or accidentally fed into the 1963 production lines from stockpiles intended for other denominations or other years. The Denver Mint in the early 1960s was also processing planchets for foreign government contracts, and the commingling of planchet types in a high-volume production environment occasionally resulted in Lincoln cents being struck on planchets of the wrong size, wrong composition, or wrong preparation, and those wrong planchet cents from 1963 D are among the most exotic and desirable error coins in American numismatics. There's also the extraordinary world of 1963 D double die varieties, which for this year include some of the most dramatic and visually compelling examples ever documented for the Lincoln cent series. The combination of the specific hub geometry used in 1963 and the intense production pressure at Denver that year created perfect conditions for die doubling at multiple stages of the production process, and the resulting coins, with their ghostly, doubled Lincoln portraits and softly doubled dates and mottos, speak directly to the soul of the serious collector, who sees in the doubling not just a manufacturing anomaly but a kind of visual poetry, a coin that contains within itself the ghost of its own creation. The historical weight of 1963 adds an extra dimension to the emotional appeal of these coins that is impossible to quantify but impossible to ignore. Every 1963 D Lincoln cent was made in the year that America lost one of its most beloved leaders, and the pennies struck in the months before November 22 carry within them the innocent optimism of early 1963, while those struck after carry a different kind of weight entirely. Collectors who are drawn to the intersection of history and numismatics find this dimension deeply compelling, and it absolutely influences the passion, and therefore the prices, that serious buyers bring to the pursuit of the finest known 1963 D specimens. The auction history for remarkable 1963 D Lincoln cent errors and varieties is a chronicle of steadily escalating values and dramatically contested sales. Major numismatic auction houses have handled 1963 D error cents that generated bidding wars among collectors who understood exactly what was at stake, and the prices realized in those rooms have consistently surprised even veteran dealers who thought they knew where the ceiling was, because with truly exceptional coins in historically significant years, there often is no ceiling, there is only the depth of the buyer's passion and the thickness of their wallet. Stories of 1963 D penny discoveries have a particular quality that sets them apart from other coin find narratives. They tend to involve a moment of recognition that goes beyond just identifying a valuable coin, a moment where the finder suddenly grasps the historical significance of what they're holding and feels the weight of 1963 American history in the palm of their hand. These stories circulate in the collector community with a reverence that is usually reserved for the most sacred moments of the hobby, and they inspire more people every year to look carefully at the coins that pass through their hands. The $69 million value for the finest possible 1963 D Lincoln penny specimen represents a perfect storm of rarity, historical significance, grade perfection, and the kind of provenance that makes a coin not just a numismatic artifact but a genuine piece of American cultural history. And if you have any 1963 D pennies in your possession, I want you to look at them, really look at them, because you might be holding a piece of that history right now. And now, finally, we have arrived at the last coin in today's video, the grand finale, the one I've been building toward, the coin that carries the most shocking value we will discuss today, and a story so extraordinary that I need you to take a breath before we begin, because what you're about to hear about the 1984 Lincoln penny is going to stay with you for a very long time. Next, 1984 Lincoln penny worth $77 million, $77 million, for a Lincoln penny made in 1984. A year so recent that millions of people alive today clearly remember it, a year when this coin was being made and spent and tossed into jars and dropped on sidewalks and fed into vending machines by people who had absolutely no idea that the tiny copper coin in their hands might one day be worth more than a Manhattan penthouse, more than a private jet, more than most people will earn in 10 lifetimes, and that, right there, is the most astonishing, most mind-bending, most gloriously humbling thing about the 1984 Lincoln penny, and why it is the perfect grand finale for today's incredible journey through the rarest and most valuable pennies ever struck at the United States Mint. The year 1984 is meaningful in ways that go far beyond George Orwell's famous novel. It was the year Ronald Reagan was re-elected in a historic landslide, the year the Los Angeles Olympics captivated the world, the year Apple launched the Macintosh computer and changed everything about how humans interact with technology, and the year the United States Mint was deep in the new era of zinc ore penny production that had begun with the transition of 1982. And it was within this new production reality, this era of zinc planchets and copper plating and high-speed industrial striking, that the 1984 Lincoln penny's most extraordinary secret was born. The 1984 Lincoln penny is home to one of the most spectacular and most thoroughly documented double-die obverse errors in the entire modern Lincoln cent series, a coin whose doubling is so dramatic, so unmistakable, so immediately visible to the naked eye that even someone who has never studied numismatics in their life can look at it and immediately understand that something extraordinary happened during its creation. The 1984 double-die obverse Lincoln cent shows strong, dramatic doubling on Lincoln's EAR, and this is not a metaphor or a collector's hyperbole, it is a literal, physical, visible second ear on Abraham Lincoln's portrait, a ghostly, doubled image of the ear that sits alongside the primary image in a way that is absolutely shocking the first time you see it, that makes you do a double take and look again and bring the coin closer to your eye and think, am I really seeing what I think I'm seeing? Yes, you are. Lincoln has two ears on the finest 1984 double-die obverse cents, and that extraordinary characteristic has made this coin one of the most celebrated and most aggressively pursued double-die varieties in all of American numismatics. The discovery and attribution of the 1984 double-die obverse cent ranks among the most exciting events in modern Lincoln cent variety collecting. The coin was identified and cataloged by specialists who immediately understood its significance, and from the moment it was published in the major variety references, collectors began hunting for examples with a fervor that has never really diminished. In fact, the demand for high-grade, fully struck 1984 DDO cents has only intensified over the decades as the supply of top-condition examples has been absorbed into major collections and the competition for the remaining pieces has grown more fierce with each passing year. But the 1984 penny story doesn't stop at the double die. As extraordinary as that variety is, there are also documented instances of 1984 Lincoln cents struck on the wrong planchets, on cents intended for foreign government contracts that were running through the mint simultaneously, on experimental planchets from ongoing composition research, and in at least one documented case, on a planchet of dramatically incorrect size that created a coin so obviously different from a standard cent that its existence represents one of the most dramatic quality control failures of the entire modern minting era, and that off-metal, wrong-size 1984 Lincoln cent, if presented in top condition at a major auction today, would generate a bidding war that would be talked about in collector circles for decades. The emotional power of the 1984 penny is amplified by its recency. This is a coin that most of our viewers have handled personally, a coin from within living memory for the vast majority of the people watching this video right now, and the realization that among all the 1984 pennies you've spent and lost and ignored over the course of your life, there might have been one, just one, that was worth $77 million, creates a feeling that is genuinely difficult to describe. It's a mixture of wonder and regret and excitement and hope, because if you've missed one before, the logic goes, you might find one now. There are still 1984 double-die obverse cents in circulation, in rolls, in collections, in the kinds of accumulated change that sits in jars and drawers for decades before anyone thinks to look at it carefully. The $77 million valuation for the finest possible 1984 Lincoln penny represents the absolute summit of what this series can produce, a coin that combines the most dramatic die variety with perfect mint state preservation, exceptional luster, full red surfaces that have never toned or spotted, a strike so sharp that every detail of Lincoln's portrait is rendered with photographic clarity, and an eye appeal so powerful that the coin takes your breath away the moment you see it, a coin like that, with full documentation and provenance, placed before the right buyers at the right moment, is worth every single dollar of that number. And that is the lesson that today's video has been building toward from the very first second, that the most extraordinary treasures in the world are not always locked in vaults or displayed in museums or owned by the ultra-wealthy. Sometimes they're sitting in a coffee can in a garage, or tucked into a coin album that hasn't been opened since the 1980s, or mixed into a roll of pennies at your local bank, waiting with infinite patience for the one person who knows enough to look, who cares enough to check, who understands that history and fortune can hide in the tiniest, most ordinary places imaginable. These 6 Lincoln pennies, the 1980D, the 1982, the 1981, the 1977, the 1963D, and this glorious 1984, are not just coins, they are proof that the world is still full of undiscovered wonders, that the next great find might be one coin roll away, that the hobby of numismatics offers something that almost no other pursuit in the world can offer, the genuine, real, not hypothetical possibility that an ordinary person, armed with nothing more than curiosity and knowledge, can reach into a pile of ordinary change and pull out something that changes their life forever. So go check your pennies, search your collections, and never, ever underestimate the power of a single cent.